All right, so today I'll be discussing the film movement known as Brazilian Cinema Novo and a film that was made during this movement called Macunaima. So, what is Brazilian Cinema Novo? Brazilian Cinema Novo, which translates to New Cinema in English, is a film movement beginning in the 1960s that focused on intellectualism, the commentary of major social problems such as poverty and social equality within the country of Brazil. However, I should note that the exact beginning of this movement is debated, as some believe it actually started in the mid 1940s with a film known as O Cangaceiro, which translates to The Bandit in English, as this film focused majorly on social commentary, while others believe the movement started in the early 1960s with arguably the most important film in Cinema Novo history, O Pagador de Promessas, translating to The Provider of Promises. So when talking about this movement, one may ask, what would it even look like? Well, Cinema Novo filmmakers all possess the same goals with their films in mind, although they didn't seek to create a film movement at all. That being said, what we consider to be Cinema Novo films are simply films that all possess similar themes created in the 1960s and 1970s with Brazilian origin and the before mentioned focuses. Naturally, not having connection in mind, though, promoted the aesthetics between films to be very diverse as they were not bound to any one style and only later being connected for organizational purposes. However, Cinema Novo films do share a specific idea rooted in any aesthetic they choose for a film dubbed The Aesthetic of Hunger by Glober Roca. Cinema Novo films projected the idea that the way the film is shot and produced should reflect the subject matter, and in this case, the films should reflect the essence of Brazil's greatest plague, which was hunger. However, Cinema Novo films approach the idea of hunger beyond the physical state to understand things like people being hungry for change, the absence of resources, and even the absence of capital. With a low-cost production style, these films were able to emphasize the social issues of the country and comment on them in more subtle ways in hopes to ignite economic reform. Here are a few notable directors and their works within this period. However, for the sake of time, I will only briefly speak on the father of Cinema Novo himself, Glober Roca. Born March 14, 1938, and unfortunately passed away August 23, 1981, known for his avant-garde style films, Roca was the leading figure of the Cinema Novo movement, who started in careers such as film criticism and journalism. Over the course of his life, he experienced large conflicts with Brazilian authorities, which ultimately and unfortunately led to him leaving the country of Brazil. The conflicts of which were started due to his criticism of the military dictatorship of the time. Fortunately, though, the conflicts helped lead him to use his talents to create films that challenged the ideals of such dictatorships. Here is a brief overview of his first short film, his debut short film, known as Patio, created in 1959, and also a link to his short film. So prior to researching this movement, I wasn't aware that it was actually broken up into three distinct phases that were the results of political alteration within Brazil over the following years, seen on the PowerPoint here. Phase one took place under President Kubitschek's administration, which helped to overcome many challenges Brazil faced regarding energy and transportation. Under Kubitschek, schools, bridges, roads, health posts, and even hydroelectric power plants were created. He even implied that his administration would oversee 50 years of progress in only 5 years, and actually succeeded in a vast majority of these claims. Despite Brazil experiencing some great changes under this administration, though, it was also around this time that the Cuban Revolution incited paranoia among conservative politicians and elites. So much so that a military coup group was formed as the right-wing people attempted to, quote, restore Brazil to its, quote, former glory. It was under these conditions that Cinema Novo filmmakers were inspired with films of the first phase, reflecting the need for reform. Each phase after this one followed with some sort of hardship that allowed for the commentary of Cinema Novo filmmakers to use as fuel for their films aimed towards change. For example, in phase 2, the democratically elected government was overthrown by the Brazilian military coup groups. And in phase 3, an institutional act was passed that closed Congress and limited freedoms. So you can clearly see that the social and political climate of Brazil in the 1960s and 1970s was all over the place with progression, aggression, regression, and oppression. As violent battles between students and police occurred, protesting and unjust arrests based on an individual's political standing are just a few examples of the social crisis majorly offset by the takeover of military regimes. And now that we've set the stage, let's talk about the film. So created during the third phase of Cinema Novo in 1969, the movie Macunaima is a tale about the unsatisfied appetite. Produced, written, and directed by Joaquim Pedro de Andrade, Macunaima explores political commentary while balancing elements of satire and comedy. The film is named after the character by the same name, Macunaima, who is a, quote, jungle-born, air quotes, ugly, wild man who is often seen sucking on a pacifier to calm his anxiety. Macunaima has brown skin, disheveled hair, and wild mannerisms and seems to be of African origin, which brings us to the largest social comment of the film, which is this previously brown man is transformed into an air quotes attractive Caucasian prince. It's then that his life takes a major turn as he is now seen as a desirable man, so much so that he's even kidnapped by a group of women so they can have their way with him. As the film progresses, we get to see how a person could be ruined by gluttony from overactive appetites for sex, wealth, and even food. I should note that Macunaima is actually transformed into a Caucasian man twice in the film, once temporarily and then once permanently. Being able to see how one was treated and looked at by their skin color alone, even in Brazil, is eye-opening to the unjust, misguided, and prejudiced actions of humans across the map. Though it is rather inspiring that Joaquim decided to create such a parable that battles equal rights and warns against being consumed by the hunger for vices, all while providing a good laugh. All in all, this movement is actually an extremely impactful one, as it takes a stand to call out the issues of the surrounding area of its origin. Despite any risks or consequences the filmmakers of this movement faced, they remained incredibly brave individuals who fought against evil through art. I guess the camera really is a gun that shoots 24 frames a second. Thanks for listening.